Hey everybody, so we have another coach firing to talk about, and this one was a little bit more surprising than the John Stevens firing. Before we get to that, I quickly just want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. As long as you're a fan of hockey and a fan of the NHL, and if you're watching this video, you probably are, then there are videos here for you, so please hit that subscribe button and follow along. I cover many topics from across the NHL, so just hit that subscribe button and follow along. Thank you. So Joel Quenneville is out as Chicago Blackhawks head coach, and to be honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised by this. Not that Quenneville's out, but more at the timing of it. It seemed to just come out of nowhere. Chicago isn't off to a horrible start or anything. They're 500. They're 6-6-3, and to be honest, that's about what I expected from them this season. I didn't have high expectations for the Blackhawks. They finished last in the Central last year. I picked them to finish last in the Central again this season. They're a team that has been really, really good for a number of, over a decade now. And it's finally run out. Their time has run out. They missed the playoffs last year. They're probably not going to be a playoff team again, but that's what happens. They've won 3 Stanley Cups. They've had this core together for a long time, and finally their time's run out. Seabrook's getting older. Duncan Keith's getting older. Taves is not the player that he used to be. Patrick Kane is still incredible, but he doesn't have the supporting cast around him that he used to. Their time is just up, and they need to rebuild, and it's going to be a little while before they're good again. And that's not Joel Quenneville's fault. That's just the way things go in the NHL. However, I do think it was time for a change. Quenneville had been in Chicago for a long time, 11 years I think it was. He was their coach. So every coach has a shelf life in the NHL with certain teams, and Quenneville's shelf life was up, and it was time to move on and go in a different direction. And go in a different direction, they certainly did. They went from one of the most decorated coaches in NHL history, one of the winningest coaches in NHL history, and a longtime veteran coach, to now Jeremy Colleton, who is a very, very young coach, actually played World Juniors with Brent Seabrook. He was on the same team in the World Juniors with Brent Seabrook. Now he's coaching Brent Seabrook. He's not that much older than some of these players. He's the same age as some of these players. He was coaching the Rockford Ice Hogs before this, which is Chicago's AHL team. So he should be familiar with some of the younger players. And he's certainly familiar with some of the older players he played with them or against them. So he's a very young coach, and that's a completely different direction than what Chicago's had for the last 11 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of changes he brings to the team and how the team responds to those changes. Again, I don't have high expectations for the Blackhawks. I don't think this change is going to, turn their season around and they're going to go on some big run and end up being a top 3 team in the division. I think they're just not that great of a team. Their roster is average. They're an average team. They're going to finish right around 500, and in a division as difficult as the Central, which is the best division in the NHL, they're not going to be a playoff team, and it's really not going to be that close. So, I mean, I can't knock the move. I think it was time for a change. I think it was time to move on. This is just the case of, it's not Quenneville's fault either. This is just the case of a team that needs to rebuild and needs a new fresh start, a new direction, and it was time to move on for everyone involved, and that's what's happened. I'm just the only thing surprising about this is the timing, because it seemed to come out of nowhere. Chicago has lost 3 straight, so maybe that was enough to get them to finally pull the trigger on this. But it did just kind of, all of a sudden, Quenneville's out. And when you're that high profile of a coach, that good of a coach, when you get fired, it's a big deal. So there was a lot of talk at the end of last season about if Quenneville was going to get fired after last season, and he didn't. but obviously things were pretty much the same to start this year. They're a 500 team, so now they've moved on. And I think it was just time to move on. Now, Quenneville, he's going to have plenty of teams looking for him. I don't know, maybe, he's been around a long time. Maybe he doesn't want to jump right back into a coaching job. Maybe he does. If he does, there will absolutely be teams out there looking for him. Any of these teams off to slow starts that could be making a coaching change, they might be making it sooner rather than later to have a chance to get Joel Quenneville. I'm looking at you, St. Louis. There are other options out there as well, other possibilities, Philadelphia. But for the most part, I think this was a move that was going to happen. If Quenneville didn't go during the season this year, he was going to go at the end of the season, because this is a team that's rebuilding. This is a team that needs a different direction and a fresh start leading to a new future. And Joel Quenneville is the past and the Stanley Cup success of the past 10 years, but he's not the future. And now that Chicago needs to start thinking about the future rather than trying to win now, because they don't have a team that can win now. So yeah, we'll see where Quenneville ends up if he still wants to continue coaching. He's a guy that could absolutely retire right now, and there'd be nothing wrong with that. He's had a extremely successful coaching career in the NHL. He's one of the best coaches probably of all time, certainly in the league right now. So he can pretty much do what he wants. And if he wants to continue coaching, there will absolutely be multiple teams out there looking for him, whether it's during this season or at the end of this season and going into next year. But it was just time to move on in Chicago, and I think that this is a long-term move for the Blackhawks as they head in a new direction and start a rebuilding process that hopefully for them doesn't take too long. Certainly hoping that it's not a Carolina or Buffalo-like rebuild, but certainly a rebuild that's going to take at least a couple of years to really get off the ground. So that's what I've got on the Quenneville firing. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, the link to our Patreon page is also in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.